Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm still drinking my morning coffee. I thought I would knock out a second informative for you guys today before I get my day started. People are like, Jason, why are you doing two of these every morning the last few days? Because I have time. Because I'm waking up early and it's like 6 a.m. right now while I'm filming the second one. And I'm not ready to eat yet. I'm not ready to train. So I might as well do some of this instead of sitting around reading. A topic that's come up recently on here is, again, some of this anti-minimalism. And there's some big misconceptions about what training minimalism is. And it's happening to the point where... Sorry, no fake sips today. I really need real coffee in. Sometimes I fake sip on you guys just to troll you, by the way. It's just fun because people catch it sometimes and they all freak out. But they had this idea that minimal effort equals minimal results. Well, yeah, that's true. But that has nothing to do with what training minimalism is. And hopefully people aren't confusing terms here, because a lot of people are confusing maybe something like HIIT, which was high intensity training from the bodybuilding world, coined by Mike Menzer and all of that, with training minimalism. Now, there are people who've used variations of HIIT and gotten good results, but most people who use it don't. Like Martin Burkham is actually somewhat a proponent of that. He's jacked, ripped, strong, all this stuff. He's part of the way he promoted his whole lean gains training. I mean, you're talking about like 3 30-minute workouts a week. All right, that is more of the HIIT approach. Now, when people say, well, I see tons of people who use that approach who don't get results, that's true. I see tons of people who use minimalist training who don't get good results, and you're right, that's true too. But how many guys do you see who do 5 different exercises for every single muscle group on a bro split who also don't get results? There's millions of them. Every single training system, if you purely look at the number of finding people who didn't get results on a system out there, that's not indicative that a system does or doesn't work or not. Because what most people lack is consistency and effort, right? If you have lack of consistency and effort, and lack of consistency in the rest of your life, you're not getting enough food or sleep, you're not going to gain muscle and strength either very effectively. These things affect your results. There's a lot more going on than just the basic training philosophy that you adopted. But when we talk about training minimalism is the idea that there is merit to your progress, to gaining strength, to gaining muscle mass, to having a low exercise selection. That in no way implies how many hours you spend training, how many sets and reps you do, how much effort you put into it, any of that. That has nothing to do with it. Training minimalism is saying, all right, I think for my goal, I should probably focus on these 5 exercises, right? You have 4 or 5 exercises you might focus on and say, these are the ones that I think are going to give me the most bang for my buck. And I'm going to add accessories and assistance exercises very conservatively. I'm only going to use them where I think they are needed and well thought out, or to maybe break a plateau at some point if I've been too stagnant too long on a big lift, one of my main exercises. That's what the idea behind it is. Whereas in the exercise variety concept is that, more equals more training stimulus, more chances to get it right, more different elements of a muscle work. So you're dealing with 2 different philosophies that are oftentimes conflicting. Now, people say, well, why? Doesn't more exercise selection equal more gains? Well, sometimes in the short term, actually, when you start looking at hypertrophy, if you're just looking at, say, a 4-week block, doing a bunch of more exercises might actually produce slightly more hypertrophy in some cases. But what we're looking at is the training effect and the distribution of your adaptations. And what you will note is that the more exercises that you do, the more variety you have, the less resources your body allocates to the motor unit learning and improvement of individual exercises. And when we start talking about longer term progress, the amount of workload that you are capable of generating and recovering from, so again, we've got the stress recovery adaptation cycle, the more progress you're going to make, and more specifically, the more progress you're going to make on what you're doing. And so the idea here would be, I always talk about squats and things like that. Let's jump over and talk about, some more people care about it, a bench press. The idea there is that if you are coming in and you're going to do X amount of work and you allocate 15 sets towards your bench press every week, right? Whereas in another guy is coming in and he's allocating 5 sets towards his bench press, maybe some incline work, and then some cable fly. So, 5 sets of bench, 3 sets of incline, 3 sets of cable flies, and then, I don't know, 5 sets of pec deck every week. Because he's trying to focus on his chest. Well, the question we would get into is what's going to put more muscle on you in the long term? What's going to improve your bench fastest? It's doing more bench press. And because you're training a motor pattern more, you're getting better motor unit learning at doing a more limited amount of exercise variety, you can improve your actual learning on that exercise. There's a skill to big movements. There's a skill component that determines how much you can lift, how much you can move, how strong you get. And the argument that would then be made is more work done on the bench press will equal more skill on the bench press. And over time, you will be able to generate more total workloads. In other words, if your bench press, you gain 10% more strength doing more volume on a bench press, when you get to a point later to where you are doing the same number of sets with the same number of reps, at any given point later, if you are stronger on the bench press, you are going to move more tonnage on whatever rep and set scheme you're doing. Therefore, you are going to generate more workload on the bench press. Therefore, you are going to gain more muscle from the bench press because of that. That's kind of the idea behind training minimalism, is stepping back and saying, these exercises here give me the most bang for my buck towards my goal, and I'm going to put an enormous focus on them. And rather than add other exercises in, I'm going to just do more on the movements that are going to help me the most, not just because of overall muscle fiber recruitment through the body, because the bigger lifts tend to do that, but because there's a skill component, and I know that in the long term, the better I get at performing this exercise, the more total muscle fibers I will be able to recruit, the more muscle mass I will be able to recruit in the long term on this exercise. Therefore, I'm going to get more progress out of it. But it's not saying that you're going to completely avoid all assistance, because at the end of the day, minimalism is based on the concept that your improved performance over time is essential on the most important exercises. So it would also say if you've stalled to a certain point and adding more volume is not enough, or you're at risk of overuse injuries from just excessively beating one movement pattern, maybe certain things are getting irritated, you could rotate in another exercise or add an assistance movement or an accessory movement to help bring that up. And then in the long term, that's going to help you more. But it's picking them carefully. That's the idea. And the concept of training minimalism, you are conservative in your selection of other exercises outside of your primary focus. That it's usually your first response to needing more work is to do more of the important lifts. It's of coming in and saying, well, I probably need to do more power cleans and more squats, rather than add a leg extension or a leg press or whatever other exercise you're wanting to add in to get some again exercise variation. Now, is there the argument to be made for sometimes training minimalism might have higher injury rates due to possible imbalances? Sometimes can it lead to overuse injuries? Yeah, it can. So there is something to be said for adding enough variation every now and then to stave that off. But it's not like you don't need 2 extra exercises added every single week to prevent that. It doesn't even have to be something you do every week. It's just having enough variation thrown in from time to time to throw that off, and it will help. But by that same token, excessive variation can also lead to injuries and inflammation, because the more exercises you are doing, particularly ones that you're just randomly doing and you're not thinking through, is this really the best choice for me? You're also going to deal with issues of a higher chance of finding an exercise that specifically irritates your connective tissue or damages you in some way. And then when you start getting pains or inflammation, you don't have a solution. When, again, your elbow starts hurting, or these tendons in your triceps start hurting, or your knees start hurting, a lot of times people don't know what exercise is causing it, because they're doing 5 different exercises, 6 different exercises that put stress at that point on the joint, and they can't figure out which one is causing the inflammation. So before long, they start wrapping stuff up and they just continue to do the exercises that are hurting them without even thinking about it. So again, you can go the other direction also, and too much exercise variation starts to increase the chance of chronic inflammation of connective tissue, joints, things like that also. So it's not like both ideas of this don't carry risk. And there can be a certain middle ground that needs to be found if that becomes a problem for you. But all in all, people need to understand training minimalism does not mean that you do less work. It means that you have a lower exercise selection. And if you need to add more work, which you will always need to add more work, there will be phases in your training to where you are not putting in enough work, right? I just went through that with my squats. My squat stalled a bit. I'm having to add volume to my squats now, and it's going to have to be that much volume indefinitely. I'm not going to be able to cut down probably any time in the near future to what I had been doing to regain some old strength on the squat, right? You're going to have to add more work at certain points, but it's the question of do you need to add 2 or 3 new exercises to do more work, or do you just need to do more total sets and work and volume on the exercises that you know are going to help facilitate your goals more in the long term. And that's all exercise minimalism means. It just means minimalist exercise selection, but it doesn't mean you're not doing 30 sets of that exercise every week. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.